Go live in 3, 2, 1.
Hello everybody, I'm Rebecca Hess with REMAX Capitol Properties, and we're live again today, and we thought we'd do something a little different. I invited my friend Nick Lawhead to come join us today. Nick and his wife Melody own North Point Radon here in Cheyenne, and I met Nick, I don't know how many, 6 years ago? Probably, at an open house. I met him and his lovely wife and family, and they came through an open house, and we kind of clicked immediately and got to be friends. And at that time, if I remember right, you and Melody were talking about moving from Colorado up to Cheyenne. Hadn't made any decisions about that yet, but we're kind of starting to look. So I thought I'd invite you to talk about radon today, because that is a big thing that we deal with as real estate agents in our transactions, and then also just your experience in moving up to Cheyenne and how that has gone for you. So I just had some couple questions I thought I'd throw at you and let you kind of answer. But first off, what was the reason you and Melody and your family decided to come from Colorado up to Cheyenne? What were you thinking about and why we're doing that?
Yeah, so started our business in 2020 and, kind of saw a need in Cheyenne, Wyoming, that area for radon mitigation.
Okay.
There wasn't a lot of other companies performing the work, and just felt like that was a need.
So it was a good business move for you
Yes.
guys to come up here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how has it been running a small business here in Cheyenne? Because it is a small business. You and your wife do primarily. You hire people out to help you, but my understanding is that you and your wife run the business, right?
Yep, pretty much. It's been, coming from me, I'm not a very business person. I just know the aspects of putting in systems and stuff. I think the business has gone well operating in Cheyenne, working in Laramie. We still work in Colorado as well. So from that aspect, it's been great.
Yeah.
There's definitely a need. There's plenty of radon in the area. Plenty of work to go around. So.
Well, I've had the opportunity to help you buy and sell homes here in Cheyenne, which has been wonderful, and I appreciate that. What's been your experience with real estate, buying and selling? Because you have done this both here and in Colorado. Are there differences or things you can point out to us that we might take away today?
As far as buying and selling, the Front Range seems like a very similar market now as what Cheyenne is kind of going through. From a radon aspect, there's quite a bit of education that's gone on over the years in Colorado, so buyers are a little more educated on what radon is, and it seems like sometimes here in Cheyenne or in Wyoming in general, it's a little more of an unknown. They go, I don't even know what this is, and then that's when they get educated during the real estate transaction.
I know our relationship with me being a real estate agent and you being a contractor. So just can you maybe explain for everyone what that relationship looks like from your point of view? How do you work with real estate agents, with buyers, with sellers? How does that work for you?
Yeah, so a lot of it is, during the inspection process, it comes up that the house or a house needs radon mitigation performed. The levels are testing over the 4 picocuries that the EPA has kind of set as the action level. And, I try to be super available and ready to, get whatever's needed for the agent that's doing the transaction. And mainly it's just, getting the right information, taking a look at the property if needed, and putting together a plan. The horror stories that I've heard of, buyers backing out from transactions because of high radon is, I think, there's no reason you should ever back out. If you like the house, radon shouldn't be a deterrent.
Yeah. Well, that's funny because when I first started real estate and radon came up for the first time, it scared the bejeebies out of me because I had no idea what that was. All I saw was dollar signs, and it scared me. But now that I've done this for a while, and obviously working with you, it's definitely something that can be mitigated, can be taken care of on any house. So that's been wonderful. So I thought maybe we would kind of dive into radon. You're the expert in this. I can tell you from my perspective as a real estate agent what that means, but you are definitely the expert. So tell us, what is radon? What is it?
Yep. So radon is a naturally occurring gas. It's basically the byproduct of uranium and granite,
Mm-hmm.
and rises up naturally outside. Never really an issue outside. When you put a house over the ground and comes in contact, the house naturally can pull radon in, path of least resistance. The house being sometimes a negative pressure will draw on the foundation, and
So it draws that gas into the house.
into the home, and then at our attempts at becoming more energy efficient, we're tightening up our structures,
Mhm.
and then that's just a concentrated amount inside the home with nowhere to be diluted.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea for a radon system is to match or exceed that negative pressure in the home and divert it under the slab or under the foundation
Mhm.
into the system to the outside before it has a chance to really be pulled into the home.
Okay, so it gets taken up and then pumped out
Mhm.
before it becomes an issue. So, kind of a question I just thought of: do we find radon more in certain areas of the country because of the landscaping? I'm like, where do we
Yes.
find it mostly?
Yeah, so more mountainous regions tend
Mhm.
to have higher levels of radon. That being said, like I said, with our attempts at becoming more energy efficient, it's starting to pop up in other
Yeah.
areas of the country where it traditionally was not an issue. But the closer you get to the Rockies, I kind of say is
The more we're gonna see
radon
it.
we're going to have.
Yeah. Yeah, and it can be on any house. We're not talking
Mhm.
about just old houses. It can be brand new houses, right?
Yep. New houses, basements, crawl spaces, slab on grade, even potential for I've had one or two homes that I've done that are manufactured with a wood skirt around
Oh,
it.
really?
The
And
levels were
and it's coming right
elevated.
there.
Yep.
Wow.
It was amazing.
Tell us, you were telling me earlier, you can monitor. Once you put a mitigation system in, you can, if your client chooses,
Mhm.
you can monitor for them. They can set you up to monitor what's happening. And you had one that came in. Tell us about that.
Yeah,
That was
so
funny.
had a customer contact me that they were interested. They'd never tested their home and didn't really think about it when they were building it, and bought the house, moved in. They've been there a couple of years and they were interested in getting it tested. I I said, you should maybe look into a home radon monitor. Those are
Right.
great for monitoring, and then if it needs mitigated, you can then monitor your levels afterwards. And he purchased one, and that weekend after he purchased it, he sent me a screenshot, and it was in the hundreds. And he's like, I think we need to do
Awful.
something. I was like, I agree. And so we're in the process of getting that mitigated.
done. Yeah.
So
So you say it's in the hundreds. I know because of my experience with you that that's a very high. What is a normal range, or what's a safe range, and how is that determined, and all of those things? What are we looking at?
the EPA has kind of set the action level at 4 picocuries is deemed acceptable.
Okay.
Anything under 4 is fairly reasonable. Anything over 4, they encourage mitigation, or strongly encourage, or say you should mitigate.
Mm-hmm.
There's no safe level of radon. It's just what's kind of economically feasible to attain most of the time. So from high levels, you can usually get down below 4,
Below
fair,
4.
with a standard
Yeah.
system. That being said, not every house is a perfect fit,
Yeah.
and you sometimes have to optimize the system. Do
Yeah.
a little more work, add a second system. I've had
That's what I was going to ask. Sometimes you have to add a 2nd
Mhm.
system
second,
Depending
third
on what-
systems, depending
okay.
on
to get the adequate mitigation.
Yep.
Okay.
And it's all about what the substrate looks like.
Yeah.
The soil underneath, hard compact or decomposing granite, that
Yeah.
sort of stuff can impact how efficient the system operates.
Okay.
And how well you're able to seal, cracks or expansion joints, open holes in the basement and stuff,
Okay.
or crawl space.
Interesting. So, my experience with, I've never had a house or a property that's needed more than one.
Mhm.
Everyone's been able to be mitigated through just the one system
Yep.
so far. So that's good. You may have already answered this, and I apologize, but what is the danger? Like, why is it a big deal?
Yeah, so radon is the leading cause of lung cancer among
Okay.
non-smokers. Second leading cause of lung cancer overall. It's a radioactive gas. It's a carcinogen. Cannot be detected with the nose or with eyesight, and it's a long-term exposure more than instant exposure.
Okay.
You're not really going to notice if you breathe in radon, like carbon monoxide.
Right, like right away. Yeah.
So the dangers are long-term exposure. There's a potential that if you happen to swallow a radioactive particle and it happens to go down and connect to a lung tissue, it could turn into lung cancer. And that's kind of the hardest
That's the
thing
big
to
thing.
say. Yes, you're gonna, you've been exposed, it's gonna happen, or no. There's no way to really know because it's a lot of times 20, 30 years down the road.
Okay, before you feel those or get those effects from it.
Yep.
So
I have a question from Courtney.
yeah,
She said, as a homeowner, is there anything I need to look out for that might be an indicator that we should get our radon tested?
oh,
If
that's a good question. So
Yes.
nothing like when you say carbon monoxide, you can kind of tell there's some effects, but is there anything with this that you could see?
Not really. I mean, maybe if you have a Geiger counter, you might be able to get a couple
Ah.
ticks. I would say the biggest indication to test your home for radon is if you have a home.
Okay, you just need to get it tested, right? Yep. Interesting. And this is not just homes, but I know you do some commercial stuff too, right?
Yep.
So it's any building that's going to have.
Any building is a good idea. A lot of the new, not new, but commercial buildings that have a commercial HVAC, they are designed more as a pressurized building. So it's usually not an issue because they're pumping air in and pressurizing the building.
Okay.
So then that kind of creates a natural barrier that the radon won't come in.
Okay. So it kind of depends on how the
building is
how
designed.
it's being built.
Yep.
Yeah. So I know we have a house being built out north of town, and we had you come in and do a radon mitigation system under our foundation. Under our basement. So what are the different types of ways you mitigate? Like, what do these systems look like? When somebody needs to install one in a house, what are the different ways we can do that?
So if it's a new construction, we kind of can work alongside the contractor in building, prepping it for a system down the road if it needs it. And we can usually get really good results if we're able to do it along with the building process so that we can maximize our ability to draw air from underneath the slab, and so we're not battling that substrate that could be very tight and not as efficient. And then hiding the piping inside the home so that you don't have anything hanging on the outside of the home is just kind of aesthetically pleasing.
Well, that's one thing we talked about when you did ours out there is I didn't want any pipes running out the front, and so you did a great job of taking it from the basement foundation up through where I don't even remember where you put it.
We put it in a chase.
It is a chase and comes out the back, so you don't even see it from the front. And that was something that was a big deal for me when we were building this house. So there's definitely ways to do that. On an existing home, what are your options there when something's already built?
So we can retrofit pretty much any home for a radon system. Obviously, there's some limitations on what the homeowner may want and need as opposed to what we can do.
Okay.
But we look for unfinished areas in the basement.
So like utility rooms would be a great place for
storage
it?
room, even a finished closet. We can tuck it in a corner and then either get it out to the exterior and run it on the exterior of the home with the fan outside, or if we're able to, we can get it into the garage and kind of hide it inside the garage. And very similar to a new construction, it's all kind of internal. And then have the fan in the attic and out to the roof.
Do you ever have to cut into concrete to do anything like that? What does that look like?
Yeah,
I think that's scary for a homeowner when you're hearing cutting into concrete. What does that mean?
It's very similar to having any other penetration you may have through your slab or through your foundation wall. We would just create the hole that we need and then seal it up when we're done, whether it's coring through the slab to get underneath the basement or coring through a foundation wall to address a secondary higher level garden level basement or something with multiple foundation, or if it's just running the pipe, we have to cut through the foundation to get to the exterior. It's really kind of part of the deal.
Okay.
Some homes we can even dig on the outside. Walkout basements are very popular. We can dig on the outside, core through the foundation that way, and get underneath the slab, and then there's nothing inside.
So there's a lot of options.
Absolutely.
And so when we get you into a house to look at it, you kind of walk through and figure out the best place to put that when needed, right?
Yeah.
Now I know from a real estate perspective, again, there's certain loans, like a VA loan requires on new builds to have radon, and there's some in these government-backed loans that may require some of this. So as a buyer or a seller, that's something to think about.
Absolutely.
I'll also say too, with radon, that is one of those things that if you know it's there, it really needs to be disclosed to whoever's buying the house. And so when I have a seller, that's something I usually address with them right away if they have a radon mitigation system already. And if not, that is probably going to be tested, and that may be something that needs to be put into the house if those tests come high.
Yep. And I'll even say with that, even if it does have a radon system, you should still definitely test it.
Yeah.
I've come across multiple homes where it has a system, and
Yeah.
it's just not effective.
It's just not doing what it
and
needs
it
to be
just
doing.
needs to be optimized or more
Yeah.
work, adding a second system or whatever.
Yeah.
It's very common. A lot of people kind of have it installed and then they just forget about it.
Yeah.
And even with a system, you should definitely still be testing. Different seasons can cause different fluctuations. Even if you test the home when you purchase it and the levels are lower, I would say that's a small snapshot. That's 2 days out of 365 days
Yeah.
of what your radon could be. I would say continue testing different seasons, or just a home radon monitor is a good option.
Okay,
To have.
tell me about monitors, or I guess along with that, I'm assuming is how do we get testing done? Like, what are the options for testing on radon?
Yeah, so a lot of times the health department, I believe they have a grant program. They can give out free test kits. All you have to do is contact them. They give you a short-term test kit that you can.
And is that just
yourself.
something you plug into?
Nope, those are just, you set them out, they're activated charcoal,
Okay.
and then you fill out the information, seal them up, mail them off.
And then they
And then
test
they'll
for
get
you.
you the
Okay,
results.
that's great. That's easy.
Yep, and then a home radon monitor is that's my favorite.
Yeah.
Because you can monitor the levels. If you need to mitigate, then you can mitigate,
Yeah.
and then you have it to monitor afterwards
Yeah.
to make sure that the levels are still,
Yeah.
where they should be.
And is that the monitor? Is that what you have on your phone?
Mhm.
You have the monitor, so for clients who want you to monitor, you can kind of take a look
Yep,
at different times for their house.
There's different ones out there, but the EcoCube is one of my favorites,
Mhm.
and they can share the profile with me, and I can load it on, and then I can just check it every once in a while on
Yeah.
my phone, make sure that everything's looking good, and I can say, oh, what happened? The levels are a little bit high, and then
Yeah.
go, oh yeah, we lost power or something,
Yeah, I know with my experience in having someone come in to test for radon, they want the doors and windows closed. They don't want a lot of people coming in and out. Why is that? Tell me why the theory behind
Yep.
that
So
is.
during a professional test for radon, you don't want anything to dilute the potential for what it is when the home's all buttoned up.
Okay.
So in the wintertime, it's easier because we're not opening windows,
Yeah.
we're leaving everything shut. In the summertime, it's harder to get an accurate reading because people have a tendency to oh yeah, let's open the windows when it's
Yeah.
cool and cool everything off, and then, you're diluting, you're getting that fresh air to mix with what the radon
Yeah.
levels could be, the concentrated levels.
Yeah, so it sounds like for a homeowner, if you want to be proactive and getting it tested for the safety of your family, there's definitely different ways to do that.
Mhm.
You can call someone who tests, right? You can get those. I didn't know that the health department has that option, so maybe call down and see that. The monitors that you can buy and put in, but definitely having that check for safety for your family
Absolutely.
is a big deal.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's good. I mean, in general, it's good for just your indoor air quality overall.
Okay.
With crawl spaces, sometimes you get that kind of that musty smell inside your home
Yeah.
that's coming from the soil in the crawl space. Putting in a radon system is going to help eliminate that so that you don't have that musty smell.
Yeah.
Some basements are a little bit moister than other basements. So, drying out that soil underneath or constantly pulling air underneath will kind of keep that basement smell out of your house as well.
So I have a couple questions for you. What's the biggest place you've ever had to mitigate?
As far as a retrofitted system,
I know I put you on the spot with that
I
one.
don't know. I did a lot of work in Aspen years ago. There were some big old mansions
Big,
up
huge
there.
mansions there.
I've done some big, probably 7,000 square foot cabins
Okay.
that needed it, if I can remember right.
Yeah.
And then, new construction. We've been doing some work on the Air Force Base.
Yeah.
And they were doing some buildings out there that I think it was like 29,000 square feet
Okay.
or something.
Okay.
One
So
building
yeah,
that we
some of
worked
them are
on.
pretty big.
Yeah.
That's fun. So on cost wise, I know, like I said, when I first heard about radon, I kind of had a panic attack because I didn't know what my sellers were going to be up against when I heard that the radon levels were high. But it ended up not being what I thought it was going to be as far as cost wise.
Sure.
And I don't want you to give any trade secrets or what you're charging people for it. But I know when I saw the final bill for that first radon, I was like, oh, that's not nearly as bad as I thought we were dealing with. It seems like it's pretty affordable and definitely worth the safety to have it done.
Yeah. Ultimately, it's people think radon, and I think there might have been some companies out there years ago that were kind of taking advantage and driving up that cost. But for the most part, it's cheaper than a new furnace.
Yeah,
on
for sure.
average.
Yeah.
on a standard basement system, it's
Yeah.
going to be fairly straightforward, painless, and we can usually get it done in a day.
Yeah, and that was the other question I
Yeah.
had is how long does it take usually to put a mitigation system in? And I know when we've called you out for homes that I'm helping people sell, usually it's just one day. You get in
Yep.
there and get it done within a day.
Yep. So standard systems from a basement is less than a day. Obviously, if you have a crawl space, depending on the size, it can kind of be a little more labor intensive and.
That does not sound fun, crawling through a crawl space.
No, it's not. And,
I'm glad somebody else does
yeah,
that and not me.
try not to.
Yeah. Okay, so that's another thing I just thought of too. When we're talking about what homes might need at any home, we're talking crawl space, basement, slab on grade. It can be any foundation
Absolutely.
that this is going to come through, right?
Yep.
Okay, so
Yep.
just different mitigation systems, I guess. Well, I guess it's the same mitigation system, just different ways in how you
It is,
do
and
it, right?
yeah. So if it's a basement, that's a sub slab depressurization. A crawl space is a sub crawl space depressurization. Same idea, just the slab, the vapor barrier that's being put into the crawl space, and the slab basically act as the same type of barrier.
Okay.
And then we just have to have that barrier, so we're
Okay.
not pulling conditioned air out of the home.
Yeah.
With the system, we want to isolate it to just the soil underneath the home.
Okay. So tell me about, just really quickly, one last thing. We are so close to the Colorado border, and you do business in Colorado. What do you see the differences in this with Wyoming and Colorado?
Yeah, so one of the things I love about Wyoming is that you don't have a lot of government intervention. Colorado has a little bit more than that,
Yeah.
and so they, it is a good thing. They require a license and certification to operate a business in Colorado for radon mitigation, and then I believe all the municipalities now have adopted the new Appendix F guidelines for radon mitigation, which requires any new construction to have passive system like we
did in our house out there, yeah.
So from that aspect, it makes it easier to mitigate because if the system is installed properly during the building process, activating it is fairly just putting it in the fan, getting it started, and then retesting afterwards.
Yeah.
So from a homeowner standpoint in Colorado, if it's new construction, there's a little more peace of mind knowing, oh yeah, my radon levels will high. Let's get it activated.
Yeah.
And
already there.
Yeah.
You just get it going, and then the fan just runs off. It's electric, right?
Correct. Yep. And it runs 24/7, so you don't have that that startup little charge from your power
it just
company.
continuously runs.
Yeah, it or not charge, but
Yeah.
it stays consistent and not a startup.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming in today. I appreciate it. Like I said, radon has been something that I've learned a lot about, not nearly what you know, and
Sure.
I appreciate having your expertise
Absolutely.
and all the help you give to me and other realtors here in town. We're grateful for that. If anybody has any more questions, let us know. And if you want to get in contact with Nick, reach out to us. But it's North Point Radon, and we're again live here at REMAX Capitol Properties.
Thank you.